I'd like to introduce you to LOOTY, but firstly I'd like to start this off with a story. And this story actually begins in China. In 1860, there was a general from England who, during the Opium War in what is now modern-day Beijing, stormed the palace. A lot of plunder, a lot of looting happened, but there was actually one furry item that they saw, which was this dog. A Pekingese lion dog, which during the times in the 1800s was actually something that was quite rare to see in Europe. Along with a lot of the other priceless items that were taken from the palace, they also took this dog. And when that dog came back to England, Queen Victoria at the time coinly named this dog LOOTY. And that was also inspiration for this project. Raise of hands, anyone who's seen this scene or knows about this scene. So it's actually from Black Panther, a Disney film. And inside that film, they showed a heist on the British Museum, where Michael B. Jordan, who actually played the antagonist of this film, goes into the British Museum and loots back looted items. Now, if we go away from this dramatized version from the Hollywood scenes and into reality, well, we actually did this. We actually did a heist, a physical heist where we went there physically into the British Museum, but left without taking a single physical item. Now, it was partly performance and partly performative as well. Also, it was an actual heist, but the trick was it was a digital heist. So using LiDAR scanners as our weapon of choice, we went into the British Museum and scanned the Benin bronzes, which were originally from the Kingdom of Benin, which not to be the country of Benin, the Kingdom of Benin, which is in southern Nigeria. And the next part of this was to take those scans and use those scans as a canvas. It was really a canvas for me to retell those stories, retelling those stories into art and taking them onto the blockchain. Now, these are more than just pretty JPEGs with a price tag. We also put in a utility into each of the NFTs, is that part of the funds that we acquire go into a separate wallet, and that wallet is used as grants to artists based in Nigeria. But we weren't just done there yet. We then took this same concept to the big stage, and what bigger stage there was than last year at the Venice Biennale, which in fact was actually our architectural biennale. And we were talking about the space that we use to memorialize culture and history. So this is just a video from the installation that we created. As you can see, that we used were void of any artifacts. And I wanted to use this as a kind of stark reminder that the culture is actually not just about that physical artifact, but it's also something that exists within the space. And now these were purposely less void and allowing us to tell those stories and retelling those stories. It was also something that was modular. So I took inspiration from the recycling that you usually have back home in Nigeria, and this whole idea of us being able to take these crates and put them into different positions, different places. This is something that could be used in the city of Accra, in Lagos, in New York, in Paris. So the next part of this was to use these crates to reimagine the artifacts in AR, adding in that level of like interactivity that was almost like taken from them. So this is an art piece that we worked with one of the biggest digital artists from Africa, from Nigeria. His name is Owo. We were trying to describe the amount of artifacts that were taken. There was a UNESCO report in 2017 that said that 90 to 95% of all Africa's, not just the artifacts, but cultural heritage, actually lives outside of Africa. And when it came to the Kingdom of Benin, there was over 5,000 pieces that were stolen, which in fact have been scattered around the globe. Now, this was a depiction of that scattering of all those artifacts, but then we wanted to bring that into real life and really have that storytelling to let people physically see how much was taken. So within the space, we had a window, which we then turned into a portal. So you can see as the users will go in, and the window in front of you turns into an augmented portal, which you can physically see the amount of artifacts that were taken and that were stolen. Next, we used the crates also as a marker for the Benin Kingdom, or the Benin Wall. When the Benin Kingdom was raided, they actually destroyed the wall of Benin, and it was said to be one of the biggest man-made structures of its time. And you can imagine if it still exists now, it would be similar to what the pyramids are in Egypt. We wanted to describe that. The crates that you see on the right there are 25% of the actual size of the Benin Wall, and then the wall in front of you would then, in augmented reality, turn into the Benin Wall, so you could see that wall being reimagined. All of this got me thinking about the way, or predominantly in the West, the way in which we memorialize our culture and history. And that's mostly done in the museum. But then what is the history of the museum? And in researching that, you can see that there's some questionable things in the past of the museum, and it's mostly about the display, also coming from these cabinets of curiosity. And part of that is when you're taking an artifact out of its context. This is one of the pieces that I made to describe this whole idea of when you take something out of its context and into a new context, it changes the nature of that actual thing. It's somehow silenced in a way, put in this cold glass box. Then next, for us, it was the Rosetta Stone. A show of hands of anyone who doesn't know what the Rosetta Stone is? Okay, that's good. So the Rosetta Stone is essentially the main piece of the British Museum. It's the darling of all the stolen antiquities that they have. And it's almost akin to what the Mona Lisa is to the Louvre. So we went there, did another heist, a digital heist as well. But there was a difference with this, as we went to Rashid. So what a lot of people don't know is that the Rosetta Stone's real name is not the Rosetta Stone, it's the Hajar Rashid. And it's from this town in northern Egypt called Rashid. Upon taking those digital scans, I worked with Professor Monica Hanna, who's an Egyptologist and a dean at the university in Cairo. We went to the Citadel in Rashid, where Napoleon, in fact, actually first took the Rosetta Stone. Upon getting to the Citadel, I then took a mesh scan of the exact location where the Rosetta Stone was taken, and then used this location to geolocate the exact position, took the digital scan that we reclaimed from the British Museum and placed it back in its original position. Now, this marked a moment in history of the first ever digital repack of a stolen artwork, and opened up the door for many other ways in which we can use technology to actually answer these questions that we have about repatriation. But we weren't done there yet. This is a sculpture that we created, which was an art piece made in homage to that trip. Rashid is a shipping town, and I wanted to kind of reimagine what it would look like if it was actually going back to Rashid, back to this shipping town where it's from. So you could see the Rosetta Stone, which we remade based off the scan in scale, and then wrapped it up as if it was going back to Rashid. What a lot of people don't know is that the Rosetta Stone is actually a fracture of the original stone. And we were thinking of a new way for us to tell that story. Using the sculpture that we created as a marker, it then tells the story of the Rosetta Stone, but then rebuilds the Rosetta Stone back to its original form. It was almost like this full circle of the reclaiming, the returning, and now the rebuilding of the Rosetta Stone. All of this got me thinking about the museum and what is the future for the museum. Like currently we have this idea is all about visibility. It's about knowability and extraction. Extraction mostly of cultures. But we could reimagine or counter-imagine what the museum could be. It could be this digital portal, a portal for us to imagine, for us to feel, and for us to dream about new ways in which we memorialize culture and history. So that concept that we had in in Venice is almost like this dual layer of the digital and the physical. A physical space with a digital realm layered on top of it. And when you think about today, everybody has their phones. We're always somehow attached to the digital in a way. But how do we engage in those dual realms at the same time and augment a space to have that as a secondary realm? What's next for LOOTY? Well, in fact, I wanted to take this concept of the museum or this dual reality and take it into the next level, which is for us to create a space or a museum where we actually have a physical space, a modular physical space that can be used and accessed anywhere, but with a digital layered on top. Thank you. Questions? Yeah? Thank you.
Hi, so it's Charlotte Fischers from the Art Business Conference. It's a very simple question. What's your next project? What are you working on at the moment?
So yeah, the next project is to take this concept that we had of the concept that we had at the Venice Biennale and take that into reality. So I'm actually working with Westminster Council at the moment to find a space where we can use as almost like a meta museum. And then I want to use this as a framework for us to expand and kind of take this way of storytelling into the future of what the museum could be. You don't necessarily need to have the physical artifacts there for us to tell the story. We can reimagine and have like the same impact without having the physical artifacts.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes, over there. Oh, sorry. One and then another one here. Lovely.
Hello, this is Farnush. I'm a student from ISA. And I was wondering who financed this project, if I may ask.
So luckily, everything that was used from the beginning, from like the genesis of the project was free. So in the beginning, I used free LiDAR technology, which is a program called Polycam. You can go into the App Store, you can download it yourself. With the rendering of all of the digital pieces that was used on Blender, you can Google and download that yourself. And then the AR was actually made through Lens Studio, which is from Snapchat, which is also free. So it actually shows like what you can do with very, like just with the idea, but with, you know, very low resources. And in terms of who's financing it, it's me. It's only me. It's something that I'm extremely passionate about. And, you know, up to this point, it's all been self-financed, but I'm also looking for support and for funding for us to further this mission.
There's another question, yeah.
I recently went to the British Museum and saw the hordes of people just kind of walking through, not really realizing what are they walking past. Sorry if anybody's here from the British Museum, but okay. But also, you know, the elephant in the room was because there's still this controversy over the Elgin marbles, which is just one of many examples, obviously. Have you been in dialogue with them? Because it clearly that conversation is part of who they are, and of course they have no museum if they repatriate everything, but at the same time none of that stuff is really theirs and was gotten by a number of ways. Have you had that conversation with them, and do you talk to institutions that are in some ways receptive to the idea of talking about it or foregrounding that conversation of saying, well, yeah, these artifacts do belong elsewhere. How do we deal with that?
So I haven't had a conversation directly with the British Museum. I would love to have a conversation with the British Museum. I would love to, because it's a very charged subject. It's a very hard subject to discuss, very emotional as well at the same time. But I think if we're not able to have like an authentic conversation about this, we can't really move forward. And I think when you said about the elephant in the room, for anyone that was at any of the talks yesterday, we talked a lot about what the Gen Zs want from the museum, and I think authenticity came as one of those things. And if there's this elephant in the room and everybody knows there's something clearly wrong, but we're not being authentic and true about that storytelling, I think there's a huge opportunity for museums to actually come out and address this, be completely honest, and it's really a big win for the museum to say what essentially everybody is really thinking about, but no one has the guts to, you know, address it, right?
All right, well, thank you so much again, Chidi, for being with us today.